Years ago, for a time, I was considering writing as a career. I researched the practicality of it and determined it impractical at that moment. During my research, I wrote a book on authors, their writing styles, literary philosophies, and literary movements. I covered as many different writers from as many different places and times in history as I could. 463 authors from 64 countries and 32 centuries. The book was written as a resource for me. I wanted to be influenced as much as possible by place and time in a literary sense. I have also gone down this path in film as well. My appreciation has been in that both forms can so nicely tell a story about place. Though I studied many literary styles and movements, the one which seemed to be the closest to my heart was South American Magical Realism. I grew up between two cultures, as I will go over in a couple of episodes. One culture of more influence than the other. The lesser was strongly similar to South American Magical Realism. In this episode, I'll focus on just Magical Realism, and the next will be on South American Magical Realism. Magical Realism has been used around the world, and several magical realist writers have won the Nobel Prize for Literature, the highest award for a writer. When I started going down this path, I ran into various people saying magical realism could not be clearly defined, or that those who define it don't understand it. I found this to be true. At first I thought I understood it, then realized it was more complicated. A simple description of magical realism is with a setting in realism, a place familiar to the reader. Something fantastical is going on in the story. The readers most often wouldn't believe what is happening, but the characters accept what is happening as true and really pay little attention to it. There is no explanation in the story of the fantastical events. They are just a fact. My experience with only a few of the earlier magical realist works outside South America is that those were not that complicated. But I've only read some Western selections, and not magical realism, from other places such as Japan, India, the English writer Virginia Woolf, the American writer Toni Morrison, and numerous others who employ magical realism in their writings. There are many in Latin America outside South America who used it. I suspect they are fairly close to that used in South America. I studied magical realism to gain another perspective, that of a writer. I have tremendous respect for writers, and in a sense, an intention of this channel is to present as a writer, a storyteller, to learn that craft. I have talked in earlier episodes about gathering perspectives. The more perspectives we gather, the greater is our brain's ability to think. The greater our ability to think as a society, a nation, or a world, the more we're able to live our potential. Literature also brings a look into culture, an understanding of others. I'll start by defining what realism is, or rather, my interpretation of it, and then in a couple of episodes, how it relates to my life. Realism by itself seems to me to be things as they are, black and white, or at least comparatively. The term can mean many different things, and can certainly go well beyond any definition. The term as a literary or art term is seeing things as they appear to be. For example, realism in art would be a painting or drawing which is most similar to a photograph. The painting is what it is. nothing more. The same is for literature. I suppose the author and the characters, in a sense, portray only reality. There is nothing deeper. I suppose nothing to be interpreted. The story is factual in that it doesn't bring things into question. It is as it seems, nothing more. Realism as a movement existed in the 19th century and pulled from a number of philosophies existing in the 17th and 18th century. Realism believes our brain is like a camera. We do not actually know what the outside world looks like, not for sure. Our brain takes the images our eyes take in, then interprets what we are seeing in the midbrain. What we are seeing, or think we are seeing, is the brain's interpretation of it, and not necessarily what it actually is. This is the same for hearing, feeling, tasting, and smelling. We then do not know what one another are, but rather we are an interpretation inside the brain of each of us. The film industry has often used magical realism. One example is the film Big, with the famous American actor Tom Hanks. He changes overnight to an adult after making a wish as a 12-year-old boy to be an adult. He then struggles with life as an adult, having a 12-year-old mind and lacking of experience to be an adult. Another example in film is Field of Dreams, my favorite movie about the sport of baseball. Actor Kevin Costner plays the character Ray Kinsella, a novice farmer who hears voices out on his farm to build a baseball field. He doesn't really question it and does what he is told. The result is many of the greatest players to have played the game, all who are dead, come to the field to play. Also, a very special guest who Ray is holding a great deal of guilt about, who is also dead, shows up. Ray is told the purpose of building the field is to ease his pain, which he doesn't understand. This strongly works as the sport of baseball has long been viewed in a magical realism sort of way, particularly many decades of the 20th century. In the eyes of fans, the players were seemingly mythical creatures, able to do superhuman feats. They were looked upon very differently. The ballparks where they played were places of magic. Baseball somehow captured this to a much greater extent than any other sport. Please subscribe and like, as YouTube sends this on to others based on this. Thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing day, and see you in the next episode.